If you could take a moment and go to thegrowingbanddirector.com to give at least $5 or $3 a month, and it helps the content continue to be created for you to help our profession grow. Let's go back to our scheduled episode. Tuner Caddy is proud to sponsor the Growing Band Director podcast. The Tuner Caddy was created by Mark Casperson, a band director with over 38 years of experience. Like most of us, he was tired of dropped tuners, wasted time, and students fumbling with their gear. So he did what any passionate teacher would do. He invented a solution. Mark designed the original Tuner Caddy after testing 57 different versions. The classic model fits right onto most music stands, holds any tuner, and even has a pencil holder. Then he added the Student Pro, a slimmer, binder-friendly with magnets, so it sticks right to the wire stands. And now there's even the TCT60M, a full tuner and metronome combo that's transposable and includes a 6-foot mic. Super practical and more affordable than most other options out there. The best part is that these tools don't just help kids stay organized, they actually improve how we teach intonation and tone. Tuner Caddy is being used by some of the top programs in the country, from Texas to Virginia, and it's even been on stage at the Midwest Clinic and Music for All Festival. You can find Tuner Caddy at tunercaddy.com, at local retailers, or through Music and Arts, Sweetwater, and Premier Music Teaching Aids. They even offer support for educators writing grants. Check them out at tunercaddy.com. Do you spend valuable time all year correcting students' hand position instead of focusing on the music? Thumb Gummy solves this. These simple, cost-effective teaching aids fit on trumpets and trombones to guide the right hand into proper position, reducing tension, improving form, and giving tactile feedback so students can focus on playing, not adjusting. It's easy to use, comfortable, and designed by teachers and players, not just for your beginners, but for older students as well. Join thousands of students and bands already seeing the difference. And keep an eye out for our new clarinet thumb rest coming soon. Visit thumbgummy.com to learn more. That's thumbgummy.com. Excelsior Music Publishing is proud to sponsor the Growing Band Director podcast. The new concert band and jazz ensemble music releases from Excelsior Music Publishing are here now and available from wherever you get your band music, featuring works of all levels from an incredible composer roster. Listen, browse, and get inspired at excelsiormusic.com. That's EXCELCIA music.com. Welcome back to the Growing Band Director podcast. This is episode number 276 here with Alex Castro. Alex, how are you?
I'm doing wonderful. How about yourself?
Beautiful. Thank you. Tell us a little bit about where you teach.
So I'm currently teaching out in Tonopah Valley High School, relatively rural. It's west of Buckeye, Arizona, really close to the metropolitan area, but not close enough, I guess.
Yeah, so we've been talking over social media about some percussion question things you had, and maybe ways I run our percussion class and things like that. So I thought rather than like trying to send a message, we just have a conversation and see how things are go. So what are some, what are you dealing with, and what are some questions I can answer?
So the biggest thing I'm dealing with is a program that was gone for a while. So I have a beginning band program starting at the high school level, which has been wonderful so far, I think. However, the thing that I'm running into is I will only have one percussion class for both my beginning percussion students
Mm-hmm.
and my regular percussion students. And I still have time to kind of decide whether I'm even going to place the beginning percussion students into a percussion class. But I found it last year as my first year at the school that having percussion class as its own thing just made it that much easier for those percussion students to get the divided attention they so much need to be able to grow a lot
Totally.
quicker.
Totally. So when deciding if you're going to combine them or if you're going to have two separate classes, you have the ability to make that choice.
Well, I think if I were to not combine beginning percussion with the rest of percussion, my beginning percussion students would be with regular beginning band. And
Yep.
I kind of really don't want that just because I'm already focusing so much on instrumentalists as it is, right?
Yep.
And then not giving them that divided attention, I feel like will be very detrimental to their overall growth in
Yep.
a short amount of time.
Well, I would say you definitely can do it. It sounds like you're leaning towards keeping the percussionists all together. And I think that's a good choice. You definitely have to be wary of, obviously, you're going to review, right? You start again next year. Like, you're not going to just skip everything. Like, you're going to go back and do lots of rhythm reading and, instrument technique and stuff like that, knowing that some kids know it already, but they need to be reminded of it. And then some kids are getting it for the first time. So obviously, when you assign parts, right, you're going to assign leaders and kids who maybe you're doubling apart and maybe they're ready for a snare drum, maybe they're not, things like that.
Yes, sir. Most definitely.
Yeah. Okay, so how do you typically structure your percussion class, or are you looking to see how I structure my percussion class, or where do you want to go?
So this last year, the way I structured it was more based on the needs of the school. So they didn't have any sort of marching band before. So I tried to get that atmosphere of starting a foundation of what marching band could be. So I leaned very heavily on teaching by rote at the beginning of the year for the percussion students so we can get some cadences out there, just get the crowds a little bit more hyped up and just get the kids more hyped up with playing some really cool um cadences. And so that worked out. But as the year kind of grew, and marching band was getting pushed back, I really leaned in to working on the students' just general musical knowledge of reading
Sure.
rhythms, reading notes, and just working on their pedagogy on what instrument is what, and really lean more towards that part as my second semester in January came along, and that really worked out wonderfully as well. Um, but I just want to know in general how I can. The biggest issue I have is splitting up the time, right? I'm a one teacher army
Yep.
now with it's looking about like 15 percussion students that are going to be coming in next year.
Great.
So I have to figure out how I'm going to divide my attention with my 7 returners versus my 7 brand new beginners at this point in
Yeah.
time.
Um, well, definitely like it's going to take planning, right? You kind of got to know what you're doing going in. If it were me, I would try to divide. I try to get, so if you think of the three areas of percussion, well, kind of four, but for me, I think snare drum, um, I think mallet percussion, and I think timpani. Those are kind of like the three big areas, right? And then the fourth for me would be like everything else, all the auxiliary percussion, and we want to get to that too. But I typically try to get to two of those three every rehearsal, and it might be that okay, we're going to take 10 minutes and we're going to work on this rhythm packet where we're learning sequenced rhythms on drum pads. I would highly suggest drum pads. Um, and so they're all doing it in a row together, and you have a backing track. To me, I mean, a metronome's great, but the minute you throw on a backing track, it's so much cooler. I like it when I play with either being on a drum or something that they can hear you, so you can even demonstrate what you're looking for them to do. So some time on that, so you're developing everybody's chops. Sometimes it's warm up stuff. Sometimes you might want to do like 8 on a hand or double beat or whatever you want to do, and sometimes you're working on rhythmic patterns that you're sight reading or whatever that is. Um, and then I might jump to mallets that next day and we're working on a certain scale exercise, or you're working on reading exercises or whatever that is. Or I might jump to timpani. But I find kids can handle like maybe 10 minutes of each sort of things. Um, and then they want to get into like playing music, and the most you can make all of that feel like music, not exercises, is great. Um, but for example, we might be doing mallet ensemble stuff or other percussion ensemble stuff for concerts that works really well. I will put out there Tap Space. I don't know if you've used Tap Space before, but that's a fantastic resource. I think they're up in Washington. I saw them actually at Midwest. Super nice people, and you can go on there and you can go on tapspace.com and search by number of percussionists you have. You can search by ability level. You can say I want it to be including mallets or not mallets or whatever, and you can hear and see everything, and it's great. So anyway, you got your percussion ensemble stuff, and then also working on your band music for the concert, assuming they're playing with the wind group, right?
Yes.
So really try to pace that out. Is really a big part of that for sure.
Yeah, and big part of that you were saying about like them getting together with band. Something I definitely struggled with last year is not having enough times where band and percussion were together,
Yep.
and then percussion freaking out because now they're hearing everything else that's going on
Yeah.
around them and having to adjust, or vice versa. Band hearing all the percussion
Yeah.
aspect they weren't hearing before, and I think I've come up with a solution, and
What's
that's
that?
just well, throughout the year, we're moving to a 2 day a week rehearsal, and I'm making marching band an optional thing. I'm gonna
Mhm.
stick to doing band percussion and sticking to fundamentals and just trying to get the students up to speed. However, I will have one afternoon rehearsal for everybody to be at a week. So once a week, percussion and band will be together Thursday nights to practice together and
Okay.
just kind of bring it all together once a week,
I
which I think will do. wonders.
I think it's really important to, I mean, we're all in different situations, right? So you got to find whatever situation is going to work for your group and try what you're going to try next year. And if it works, that's fantastic. And if it doesn't, try something else, like keep going to find that solution. I can just tell you what's worked for me. Um, because so first of all, in my ensemble, in my high school, we have two. We have like a second band and a first band. It's basically a freshman band and then an older band. And the wind ensemble, the older band, the percussionists are in with the winds. It's a typical band rehearsal. I do this just for basically our freshman band, the ability to split them up. Um, the choosing of literature is really important. Like I choose literature that basically the winds plus the percussion equals the piece. There's some pieces where it's very interactive. And sometimes I can do those pieces, but a lot of times I have to stay away from them. So first of all, I find if the percussionists know the book and the winds know the book, then they go together within a couple of rehearsals pretty well. Then you have the avenue of how do you get them so they know what to expect come concert time, right? For me, it's like we'll do one maybe 3 weeks before the concert and then one the week of the concert, maybe half an hour each, and they're usually great. The way they know that is, first of all, the percussionists, many times they'll practice with the recording, right? We'll put on the recording on the speakers and they'll play along. Now, that's not all the time. It's not like I do karaoke band all the time, but it is really helpful once they're starting to get an idea of the piece to then put the recording on. It's like, and they see like, oh, this is why this rhythm is this way, and this is why who I'm with. So I think that's really important for the percussionist. And for the wind players, I actually do the same thing. They will hear the recording, and then we will once in a while actually play full band winds with the recording, just so they can hear what the percussion is going to be like. And also knowing as an experienced teacher what it takes to put it together. If there's a spot where the marimba has the tempo, maybe the straight eighth notes in the marimba, and you need them to follow that. In the wind rehearsal, I'll stop and I'll say, everybody write the words, listen to the marimba here. So they still have those same notes for when they get together, they know where they're listening to.
So that's actually a wonderful idea. Actually, thank you.
Yeah, it's worked really well. And for the people who don't do this, like I understand a lot of people, it's so much easier in some ways to have the percussion with the winds, right? I mean, you have a bass drum back there, you got a snare drum, and as long as they're playing accurately, like that helps everybody in front. I actually view it as the opposite. If you can get the winds to sound amazing alone, and then you add the percussion, it's just luxury, and vice versa. And the real reason I do it, besides having a second class, like it's one less general class you need to teach, like piano or guitar or whatever. It's like it's another band class. But your percussionists get so much better because you
Oh,
have the stuff, and your winds can actually sit and work on what they need to work on. Not, okay, it's been 6 minutes, we got to move on because the percussionists are going to hit each other with wet mops back there.
I wholeheartedly agree. And like I was speaking about earlier, it just allows the students to get that attention that they need, specifically in percussion. Uh, the kids just want to be playing. At least that's what I realized. They just want to play. And I feel like with the whole band situation, they just don't get that time of just getting to play most of the time, especially if it's like, okay, trumpets, here we go, or whatever may happen. And then I did have a question that just kind of popped up just because I don't really have very many resources. I looked up top space, which is wonderful. But I was looking for maybe some type of book or kind of chronological way of like where should my students be at this kind of
Mm.
point in time? Because right now I've definitely been teaching a lot more rhythmic stuff and getting them to just read rhythms. I think it was a book called A Zoo Goes to Band or something like that, where you're able to do rhythms off of like animal names like caterpillar for 16 notes, butterflies are 16 note rhythms
Mm-hmm.
and such, and then being able to translate that back and forth to different counting systems, and that's worked out well. But I would like to get more of a pedagogical approach to learning percussion. I just
Yep.
wondered if you have any ideas on that as well.
I personally, besides maybe working with really young kids, I'm talking like 4, 5, 6 years old. I don't usually use those mnemonic devices of the names. I mean, I understand that pepperoni is 16th notes and all that, but we typically teach the counting aspect of that. As far as a method, I think you can find them a ton of different places. I mean, there's hundreds of band directors who put up, you know, rhythm sheets, or I think there's a rhythm drills one that's great that we use. I mean, there's just so many things that you can use. We'll put a couple texts in the show notes as well for people to click on. I love let's see, there's a couple snare drum books that I use. One is called Stick Control for the Snare Drummer. I think that's George Stone, and then Snare Drum for Beginners, Goldberg. That actually has duets, which is kind of cool. I You actually asked about where my students should be. You kind of used that phrase. They should be where they are, and then you try to take them to the next step. So, for example, my wife and I started in Westbrook 2006, and we were both new to the district, but we've been teaching a while. And then for the first year, I was writing out these less like rhythmic lessons and gave them to her, and we did them in grades 6 through 12. Like none of them knew how to count eighth notes. None of them knew how to count. It wasn't where they should be. Literally, the seniors counted the same way the eighth graders and the sixth graders did because they were all in the same place. So I wouldn't be opposed to just saying, okay, these are eighth notes. These are 16th notes, and actually for percussionists, 16th notes and eighth notes are easier. I mean, quarter notes is probably the easiest because you're keeping the beat. But the minute you get to half notes and whole notes, they got to count, or let alone rests. That's a whole thing as well. In fact, I think I interviewed Quincy Hilliard, the composer, and he has this book. I forget what it's called, but it basically uses rests more often than other pieces. So it has all these rhythms, but it includes rests as well. So I think finding like rhythmic stuff would be pretty simple to use. There's another book I would recommend to people by Ted Reed called Syncopation for the Modern Drummer. That's a fantastic. You can probably get it on Amazon for $8, and it's like meant for drum set originally, but you can use it amazingly for any type of rhythmic work. So I would say go where they're at, and take it from there slowly.
Thank you. Yeah, it's actually a lot of great information. And I guess just another, it's more of like, I guess, a Q&A. How do you go, I guess, about splitting up your class? I know we're talking about 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes here. But the selection of repertoire, I guess, is where I just have no idea as it pertains to percussion.
Yep.
Yeah, I can go back and forth, be like, okay, I know where they're at. I know where they can be in maybe the next few months, and maybe we can push for this a little bit. But percussion is where I'm a little bit lost, because I guess in my mind, percussion is rhythmically. And I know there's a lot more musicality, especially because my fiance is a percussionist, right? But I trying to like tie it all in together is kind of where I'm struggling on, especially because I want to move to doing more percussion ensemble stuff. And I think that would help them out immensely more as far as like their listening skills, as far as their overall just awareness of everything going on around them as they're playing, because I feel like they struggle with that sometimes. And so how do we go about, I guess, choosing that repertoire for percussion students?
So first thing I would say is work to understand the instruments, right? And if you're getting married to a percussionist, you have a golden opportunity right there. So what I would say is like take a snare drum, like what can you do? Right? It's not about teaching it right now. It's like imagine you have to play all these parts. So if you look at it, you're like, oh, this actually looks hard, but it's pretty simple. Or I have no idea how to play that, right? Well, between your fiance and YouTube, you'd have a pretty good chance at figuring out how to play it. So I would say go back and play all the instruments, and then figure out what's hard and what's not hard. But basically, if the kids are having a hard time playing it, it's hard for them, right? So I would view all the parts as different. I'd view timpani and snare drum and bass drum and mallets and all the auxiliary. Those are all different parts, right? And they all have different techniques. So if I were you, I would just choose one instrument to start. Like maybe just start on timpani and watch some YouTube videos, practice some timpani, and kind of figure out, where you're at. Like, for example, one of the methods we always use is like, there's a Garwood Whaley, what I even wrote it down here, it'll be in the notes, primary handbook for timpani that we use. And 99% of the time, we just use their 2-drum exercises. But it's all these great exercises, like 16 bars long, just using 2 drums. And every time there's a rest, they have to dampen both drums. Even if they're only playing 1 drum, and they literally say the word, like if they go high, low, dampen, high, low, they have to physically say dampen when they like touch the drums. That's just, teaching them all to play timpani. Well, how do you teach 15 kids to play timpani at once? Well, that's you got to get creative, right? So at one point, so we have 5 timpani, so you can get 4 kids on that. Like in every crack, there's like a high and a low, and then they're sharing this timpani with one kid's left hand and the other kid's right hand, right? So you like basically get as many kids. I've had kids on the other side of the timpani too, where you're like basically you're sharing every drum that you can. If you have a second set of timpani, then you can. I had once where there was like 12 timpani just lined up. That was cool, but we didn't keep those
Wow.
timpani. Well, they were not great, but they were physically ended
Yep.
up trading them in. But what you can do is take 2 practice pads, right? And like you play them just like timpani. And then maybe one day you have set, these 5 kids on timpani. The next day you do it. The other kids get to be on timpani. The other kids are on pads, or maybe the stronger kids are on timpani at first, and then the weaker kids move to the timpani after they've been playing on the pads. You just got to get creative with that. I've even had it so we don't have enough pads. There's 1 pad per kid, and the low drum is the pad, and it's on a stand, right? It's like on a music stand. So low drum is a pad, and the high drum is the stand. So you hear like doom, doom, check, check, check. It's like obvious that it's 2 different sounds, but it just is what it is. Now, there's more specific timpani stuff when it comes to that, right? Like quality of rolls. Where do you hit it? Like where do you actually play the timpani? Because if you hit it in the middle, it sounds dead. If you hit it in the end, it sounds thin. It's about a third of the way in, but anybody, if you just listen to it and just like find the sweet spot, that's where you want to play. I found with timpani that if we just do, every week some timpani work, that I can basically pass out, like all my kids can cover a timpani part and they can do pretty well. There's going to be some kids that are stronger than others,
Of course.
right? So I wouldn't try to take it all on at once. I would definitely try to like deal with what you can at first. Question I have is, are there kids in your program that are a little more experienced that you can like ask them? You can say, hey, what does this look like for you? Is this like simple for you, or is this a challenge, or things like that? Are you able to get their feedback?
Sadly, in percussion realm, no, they were all true beginners last year.
Okay.
In band, I have 2 kids who might be experienced, but everybody else
Yep.
was the true beginner.
I guess I would also start looking up on YouTube ideas like, I don't know how your snare drum chops are. Like when you see certain rudiments or rolls, like, do you know how to do that? Things like that. Because you want to be able to demonstrate those things.
Thankfully, not the greatest chops, but
Yeah.
fiance is actually a snare player,
Yeah.
so anything snare, she's been very wonderful in being
Yeah.
able to teach me or help me with.
Well, and I mean, I could always go through like the approach I take for kids, but again, I'm a trumpet player. I've adapted what I've found to work for us. But again, people go to YouTube. You're going to find a multiple bounce stroke. If you can do multiple bounce stroke where you go one stroke and it goes da 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 da, that's going to turn into rolls, and you're going to be just fine. Like I hear 9-stroke roll, 5-stroke roll, 13-stroke roll. Like that makes me want to throw up. Like I don't even know what that means, right? I'm a trumpet player. I don't. What do you mean 9-stroke roll? All it means is 1 E and a 2 E and a 3. 1 E and it's a half note. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3, and each time it buzzes, it hits twice. So that's why it equals 9. It's 5, plus the 4. So I mean, but again, YouTube can teach you all those things. So kind of come up with, I guess what I would say is, okay, for each set of instruments, like next year, what is like 4 or 5 things I want them to learn how to do? Right.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of beginner percussionists. What's about the grade level of the band that you're playing? Like what music do they sound really good on?
Last semester they ended at a grade 2,
Okay.
and they were sounding pretty good at a grade 2. And I think that's probably where they're at. I think I do have some stronger percussionists than others, but that's because, if you practice outside of class,
Yeah.
you'll improve. Um, I think realistically, I could probably give them a grade 1 or 1.5, and they could probably read through that now.
Yep.
At least the students that are returning. Um, so what I would hope for next year is I would like to move up to a 2.5 if I can, to a 3, just because again, I'm getting a lot of beginner percussionists, so and I don't want to just throw it all at them and just be like, oh
Nope.
yeah, we're gonna go all the way to grade 3 or grade whatever it might be. And I just kind of, like you were saying, kind of meet them where they're at, but also challenge them enough so to where they feel like they can be successful.
You're going to find that you need to review a lot next year too. You have to go back
Hmm.
because they're going to forget a lot of stuff. And compare next year's band to next year's band, not this year's band, because you're going to have years in your career where like next year's band is not as good as this year's band. You
Hmm.
know, you're a better teacher, you're improving, but it's a different group of kids. So you might find you're playing grade 3.5. It's like, yes, we're killer. And then you might go like, whoa, if they play a grade 2, they can't play that right now. Like you know, you have to kids want to sound good, right? And if they're
Of
not
course.
sounding good, then it's up to us. Is it within their wheelhouse or not at this point, and finding where that is. Um, uh, I mean, everybody knows the name Randall Standridge. My big advice would be choose music. Probably choose less music for now. Like people say, oh, I need to have 4 or 5 pieces. Like, okay, maybe find two that are going to work really well. The nice thing here, I forgot to say this about splitting your classes, is you can do a ballad, like a lyric ballad with almost no percussion parts, and it's gorgeous. Take your top player and add him on a timpani at the end, or add the crash cymbal in the middle with one kid, and like you can do it quickly. But you can do 3 pieces, but the percussion only learns 2 pieces, or maybe they learn two, but in their third piece is a percussion ensemble piece they play before the band or something. You know what I mean? They don't have to
Hmm.
sit there through the ballad. So if you've got 14 players, like you're going to learn what you can double and what you can't double. For example, vibraphone, as many vibraphones as you can get in your band room. You could have 10 vibraphones, it won't be too loud, you know. Snare drum, I typically don't use any more than two, and if I do use two, this one kid is snares on and one kid is snares off, so it almost sounds like a field drum, and they have to equal one player. So it's like harder for them because they have to play 50% volume all the time. You can't double timpani. You know, there's some stuff that you can't double, but um finding stuff where there's plenty of stuff for kids to do, and then things for kids to do, and pick pieces that have harder parts and simpler parts. You know, typically percussion 2 or 3 might be a little simpler in some pieces than percussion 1. Or maybe there's a chimes part that is very simple. Well, you might have 6 kids play the chimes part. Like, I don't know how many mallet instruments you have. Like, I have a ton because I just take everything I can. But I'd be like, okay, the 6 of you, we're gonna play chimes, and you're gonna be on the chimes because that's where I think you should be. And the other 5, we're gonna play the chimes part, but we're gonna be on marimbas. 3 kids per marimba, and like literally playing this simple chimes part. So just like trying to find music that has a lot of percussion parts and varied enough so you could sitting there in the summer, you'd go like, okay, this kid's probably gonna play timpani and this kid needs a challenge. That's a great snare drum part for that kid. But these 5 kids could do this. You know what I mean? Like kind of come up with your plan before you buy it. And I think those are secrets to sort of, you know, get putting them in the right situation.
I guess as a follow-up or question on that is I found myself last year when I had certain pieces that maybe required like only 2 or 3 players, especially in the ballad aspect. I would allow maybe those 2 or 3 players if it was a harder part, practice a part, but maybe not assigning all percussionists to every single piece as well, and having them work on other things like rudiments or other foundational things. Have you ever tried that? And how has that worked for you?
I typically will have us all doing the same thing together. If I divide us up, if there's only one teacher, I just find it's not as productive. There are times where I'll let them pair up and like work on something maybe for a test or sight reading test or something they're preparing for a final. But when it comes to band rehearsal, like if we're rehearsing a piece, I'm going to have them all there. And I just have to say, there's pieces I don't do right now because I currently, my wind ensemble next year has 12 percussionists. I'm not joking because I was actually going to put up there was going to be 8, which is a very lot for like a grade 4 or 5 wind ensemble. But there's another 4 kids who play great. I was just going to keep back one more year until kids graduated. But the honors sophomore English class is at the same time as the percussion because they are spread. It's not like the band class. It's like this percussion class, and it's like, well, I want you to play, so go. Um, so it's just really important to me that they all play together. So for example, Frank DeKelly, I love Frank DeKelly. If you have 12 percussionists, it's just not appropriate for what we have. Just like if you have three percussionists, Randall Standridge is probably not in your wheelhouse unless you find something with less percussion, right?
Mhm.
So I probably go, that's a great piece. Not doing it this year because I owe it to these kids. It's just like, what are you a trumpet player, Alex?
I am a trumpet
Yeah.
player.
So if there's like a fantastic trumpet solo, you'd be like, that's an awesome trumpet solo. If you don't have a kid who can play that or can grow into it, you probably go, I'm going to wait on that piece until, I have a trumpet player who could play it. That's like band director 101. So it's the same thing with percussion. Like, man, those mallet parts are crazy. We're not ready for that. Or I just need more for them to do. There's a ton of things that you can do. Doubling the bass drum is fantastic. What I do with doubling the bass drum is one kid plays the bass drum and I get two floor toms, like from drum sets or whatever, like timpani mallets. And so they're like, yes, it might be a hair heavy, but at least they're doing something.
I like the fact you're saying at least they're doing something and keeping him entertained really has. I think it was a big part of last year, just always having him make music or doing something
Mhm.
really allowed him to buy into just the overall culture of just enjoying playing and having fun with it. And
Once in a while you can do a piece that doesn't have enough percussion, but you have to have a game plan. So for
mhm,
me, last year, concert one, I really wanted for the wind players to do the Bach Prelude and Fugue in B flat. It's a great piece, the moment arrangement, grade three, fantastic for them. There's only a timpani part, but I wanted to do it. And so I did an arrangement where I basically wrote out full percussion ensemble with that piece. There was marimba parts, vibraphone part, bell part, chime part, and like a little ride cymbal part, just for a kid who barely did anything. And it was very tasteful and it worked really well with the piece of music. But that took me arranging it ahead of time.
awesome. Yeah, I like that. Go in with a plan. Because there's less you can do,
Yeah.
honestly.
So have you chosen your music for next year?
Um, I have ideas. I haven't fully decided. I wanted to wait to get through the first week of classes to see where my middle schoolers are going to be at. From what I understand, they're still like at a grade one from 1 year of middle school.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just trying to meet them where they're at and but just trying to figure out where that might be and not just overwhelm them with marching band, overwhelm them with again what I want to play. I want to give them something that is going to allow them to grow with the piece they're learning, right? And
Absolutely.
that's the biggest part for me at the very least at the moment on that.
It is definitely hard, like in my situation, my wife is the feeder program. I mean, I know what all the bands sounded like. I know what they're doing coming in.
Mhm,
I've picked stuff for all of next year. I can order it and we might move a little bit here and there depending on how the year goes and things, but I could basically I've done enough and I know where our program is at. Um, what you might want to do is go ahead and order three pieces that
mhm,
not that like this is a three-piece set, but like here are three pieces that I think are about where they should be. And this is my suggestion for younger teachers, take a half grade level off it because we're all going to go, oh, I think they can do this. Yeah, but you want it to sound good right away, So, maybe it's like Starfire Fanfare, Randall Standridge, which is a great grade 1.5 with tons of percussion. Just like find stuff that you like that you think would be really great for the kids. Have it, go off and running, and then you can always change pieces if you need to.
But yeah,
So,
I know a big one that I was looking into. I don't know. I when I'm planning right now for my concerts, I'm trying to think of like one big theme for like the end of the year as like what I'm trying to do.
mhm.
And this year I kind of want to do a culturally diverse like program where I'm getting composers from like around the world. And so I guess little plug for the podcast. Um, the episode on Japanese composition and Japanese music really spoke to me, and I've been on a Bravo Music. I think that's the name of the company
Yeah.
grind right now, just listening to stuff, looking
Hmm.
for new things, and it's been wonderful actually, just listening to different music that you're not used to listening to very much here in JW Pepper or Stanzas and other stuff.
I love that. If people are curious, I think that's episode 214. It was with Nick Pierce called
Yeah,
Japanese Wind Band Music. Yeah.
oh, it's wonderful. Also, Bravo Music,
Yeah.
really wonderful stuff as well.
Yeah, I love the concept of okay, whatever your last concert is, or whatever your like culmination concert. Like for us, our culmination concert's in the beginning of April, And then after that is like a town rehearsal, a town thing. It's a little more movie. So like I know, okay, for this concert, I think like Molly on the Shore. Okay, that's going to be where I think we can do that. Okay, well, what are we doing before that? What are we doing before that? So for example, we had kids 2 years ago, last year, who did Blue Ridge Reel by Brian Balmages, right? Which is like, if you don't know that, it's like a grade two Irish jig kind of Appalachian kind of cut time thing,
Mhm.
features clarinets. And then this past year we did the second movement of Songs of Old Kentucky by Brant Carrick, which is like another hoedown, like another country music, but it's like a grade three, 3.5. Well, because those kids are now in the top band, and it was an older band versus a freshman band and all that. Well, those same kids are still around next year. So like Molly on the Shore is, it's like one of those things. Now, whether it works out or not is a whole other thing, but I like that either going year to year or okay, we're going for that piece. So what's another piece I can find that might get us there, or a couple pieces along the way. And if you can't find them, I don't know, Alex, if you're part of the Facebook group that we have, but if you jump on the Growing Band Director Facebook group, put out a question like that, people always jump in with ideas for pieces too.
Yeah, and I think another big one that I realized Randall does a really good job at trying to do music that is sequential as well. Like
Mhm.
on like as far as like the Unbroken series, you have like a grade one, a grade two, a grade three, and then so forth and so on. And just seeing that, I think just my students, we actually played Fragile by Randall last year, and really wonderful piece, but now they're so interested in the Unbroken project that they're wanting to play the next part of of it,
Mhm.
which I think is Not Alone. It's the next one, and and so doing music like that, I've seen really has given the students like this almost like purpose of like, oh yeah, we want to go to the next, what's next or what's coming up next,
Mhm.
and how it all connects to the original grade one they learned like last year or whatever that might be.
I love that. And there's definitely a balance. Like if your kids are showing interest, like you obviously want to cultivate that and go for it. At the same time, like you want to choose the music, right? So like there is a balance there, because we've had kids like, because some kids, well, most kids are not like prepared to be able to actually choose the repertoire. But you're right. Like it is important to be able to follow that.
Awesome. And then
Uh,
I'm looking at the notes in general. We're talking about you were talking a little bit about written work and hands and reading. Could you we're talking about the backing tracks.
yeah.
Do you have a place or anywhere that you're like, oh, this is a really cool backing track? Or you just go on YouTube and get like some
Yep.
simple drum beat that you guys play over?
Yeah. You can do, because in YouTube, you can put, whatever beats per minute.
Mhm.
I might go like 108 BPM calypso groove, and whatever pops up. All that matters is that it's like fun to play with. Sometimes it'll be 100 beats a minute funk drum set. So yeah, I don't have a playlist or anywhere else that I use that. Obviously, you can use metronomes, and I think there are apps you can use that like have these sequentially faster things. I just pick one for the day and use it.
Thank you.
Yeah. I did want to mention too the mallet ensemble thing. This is like maybe a sensitive topic, because I obviously respect copyright law. Um, but I have found that, I think kids naturally like snare drum or naturally like mallets, and kind of naturally, sometimes they love both, but, a lot of kids kind of gear towards one. But it's very common for kids to go, I'm a percussionist, but I don't play the mallets. Sorry, I don't do that. Well, in our program, you're not allowed to do that. Like that is what it is. In fact, for the first year, they don't play anything but mallets in our beginner band. But even with that, there are kids who are more or less mallet focused. Um, but I find that if kids are learning pop music in mallet ensembles, they like it. For example, for our All City, we played Apate. We played what was another tune we played? You Don't Know You're Beautiful by One Direction. And there was another tune that they loved. Like, and I'm not saying that's technically legal, right? I just will like take this little lead sheet of this tune, and then I'll sit down at a marimba and be like, okay, how do I like what's the chord progression? Here's a hint. It's typically three chords, right? And then you kind of just like write a little, here's a part two with like maybe two notes each. Then here's a melody, and and then they learn them. And then all of a sudden they're playing mallets, and they're like jamming out to whatever tune they're playing. Um and it's a great way to get kids interested in playing mallets. And you could do it with two kids, You can do it with 20 kids. It doesn't matter.
I guess point of information on that. I've heard of a company called Leopard Percussion, I think. It does a lot of really good work with like more popular
Hmm.
like music and just percussion ensemble stuff and different just percussion stuff in general. I think they use toys as well as a drum set if you can get a drum set in there, and a lot of marimba vibe and silo work as well.
Hmm.
Um, I guess just because I asked about drum set, it just popped into my head. How do you go about a drum set teaching? Do you even do it at the like the beginning level, or do you concentrate on it later on for like jazz band? How do you go about
Yeah.
drum set learning or playing or teaching?
So at our middle school level, my wife will sort of choose a kid who's ready to play drum set for the jazz band. You have an eighth grader leaving. Okay, who's the sixth grader or seventh grader who's ready to jump in? Who's taking lessons on their own? And sometimes there's two or three drummers, and you have to do the rotation of, okay, you're going to play congas on this one and drums on that one and vibes on this one, or what. It depends on what it is. But I will once in a while have drum set classes as part of that percussion class. We'll sit and like learn basic grooves. So maybe you're in a position where like you want to start a jazz program, you don't have one. You're like, but we don't have any drum set players, like none. Okay, well, 6 months before you want to start one in your percussion class, you're like, okay, let's write out a basic swing groove and let's all play it. Well, how many drum sets do you have access to? Like, like maybe one, maybe two or three, but not 15. And if you
Hmm.
have that, well, like that's awesome for you. Um, but you can tip it. You can have like, okay, here's a basic ride pattern. And maybe Alex, as the non-percussionist, maybe you don't know how to play jazz drum set. I don't know. I don't know you, right? Like I can play jazz drum set, but at one time I couldn't. So I look up on YouTube first the summer before. How do I play a simple pattern? Or like maybe a simple and then a little harder pattern. Then I write those out. And then I make sure I can play them. I go into school and I like sit there and learn it. Okay, so then when we start, you have it written out, or maybe you're doing it by ear. Maybe it's however you want to do it. And then like, okay, everybody, it's written on the third space. Let's all play quarter notes. Okay, great. Okay, let's put 2 and 4 in our foot. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, 1, 2. Like however, and that might be again, their right hand might be on the music stand, and their left hand might be on a pad or their foot or whatever. So they're like, all the kids are playing these patterns together. And
Hmm.
3/4 of them might never play drum set,
Hmm.
but you're trying to find a couple kids who excel and you're teaching them all. And then once you've done it enough, you'd be like, okay, today we're going to rotate. We're all going to do this, but who wants to be on the drum set? And then, you have like everybody gets a turn, who wants a turn kind of thing. So you kind of like build it into your full classes. Um, but it takes you learning it ahead of time and sort of like building that into your program before you need to actually have a drum set player.
No, thank you. That was actually you nailed it. I have all beginner players who have never played
Yeah.
drum set,
Yeah.
but I introduced it the same way you were talking about. I was like, hey, you know what? We're gonna do a drum set week and just kind of see where we're at and rotate around, and we're playing on like chairs, playing on everything you can find. And I did find my one student who kind of excelled on it, but he's actually I guess my one percussion student that kind of comes easy to him. Yeah, he
Mm.
plays guitar outside of percussion, so he already has some music knowledge or understanding before he joined.
Well, and here's what's tricky. Like, you also need, well, sometimes your best drummer might be a horn player. You might have a trombone player who plays drums and you didn't know they play drums.
Mhm.
You also need a bass player. And a lot of times, like your bass player might be a flute player, but it also might be, I've got two great drummers. One's going to play bass and one's going to play drum set. You know,
Oh,
that happens too. You mentioned chairs. It's also really cool to write your own percussion ensemble pieces. Like you can do it, you can have kids write it, but so for example, um, like Dan Buckvich, if you don't know that name, Bukvich, he's at University of Idaho, been there for a super long time. He's got a lot of great music out there. He has a piece called Seat Beat, which is a percussion ensemble piece. It's written for two drumsticks and a chair. And you can do it with two kids, you can do it with 1,000 kids. It's literally like, here's a groove for 4 bars, and you play it on this part of the chair. And then, you know what I mean? Like you can write it however you want. So I've written a bunch of these for my students where like, yeah, I'm sitting in a study hall, I'm like, and I'm kind of pretending I'm playing. And it might be something super cheesy, like doom, 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 chuck, goom, 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 doom. So you like write that out with like Okay, how do I get a high sound on the chair, and how do I get a low, because you're not going to hurt the chair, right? um and so how do I do that? And then a lot of times what I'll do is, okay, play this 8 times. So you write the measure, like, here's 8 times, and you have to teach them kind of how to play this 8 times, and then or 7 times, and in the eighth measure everybody just does stick clicks, click 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 click, right? And then you go back and do it again. So like you're making a little percussion ensemble piece. But then during those stick clicks, a kid gets a chance to improvise for 4 beats.
Mhm.
So everybody's clicking. The other kid might go zakum zakum zaka, and then you go back to whatever that rhythm was. That every kid goes around and every kid can improvise as part of that. 7 bars and 1 bar is very safe. And even if the kid totally does nothing, like they fall on their face, the other kids are going to go click, 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 and they're going to come back in, and life moves on, and you don't even bring any attention to it. It's a great way to like do these simple percussion ensemble pieces that aren't written out. They're free and they're creative, and kids usually love them. And then once they learn them, you do choreography with it too. Sometimes it's like there's a drum in the middle and you make a circle. And when it's your turn to do the solo, you have to go to the middle of the drum and play your solo like on the drum. And then, you know what I mean? Like there's 1,000 things you can do to be creative. I mean, if Steve Reich wrote a piece for 2 people clapping called clapping music, like you can write stuff for chairs or drums or pads or stands or whatever you want to do.
Thank you. Yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to bring that one up as well. That's really awesome.
Percussion is really fun. It sure is.
It really is.
Do you have any like thoughts or questions, or maybe things we haven't talked about that you've been kind of wondering about? Not that I have the answers.
Um, I mean, the biggest things that have come to mind, I think I've already asked, and it was funny they were saying I'm probably gonna have one of two of my drumline kids, one playing bass, one playing drum set. It's exactly the same way I think if I were to start a jazz band, which the kids are getting kind of hyped up for, especially because we did the last week of school we did like a little we got lucky and we were able to watch an Air Force like jazz band.
Mm-hmm.
And they were so hyped. We're like, oh my gosh, I can scream, or I can do this, or I can do that, and seeing it live. Also, I guess plug there. Make sure your kids get to listen to live performances.
100%.
It's the only way they're going to get more excited and really hear and understand what they're supposed to be doing. Yeah, before that, these kids had no idea what like the jazz band was supposed to sound like, and it was just wonderful to see that live. But yes, you'd be surprised the amount of other things your students can do or can play. Um, I had a random kid come in. He's a senior last year, graduated, and he came in and wonderful pianist. And he tells me, Mr. Castro, why couldn't you have come 1 year earlier? I would have loved to play in the jazz band. You're going to
Mm-hmm.
create one and all that stuff. And that was, it's just really sad to see those kids go.
And you never know, that concert your kids saw, look back in 10 years, that might be the starting point to this great jazz program that you've created, right? Because you go, okay, these kids want to do this now. Great. I got to find a chart they can play next year. One chart. Let's do like one thing. And then you just every year you kind of build it. Because if you think about it, in a couple of years, the kids are all going to be new, but your program can keep building through a little impetus, like having that one concert. I would just say the repertoire is everything. Just like when we talk about with percussion or concert band, like finding the right repertoire is just all of it.
I
So
guess speaking of just finding like the right repertoire, I know um we really try to think about like sequential learning, right? Making sure that we pick the music that is going to help you get to that next level.
mhm.
Um and I guess a question from that in I guess the percussion world um is aside from we're talking about, I believe, where is it? Tap space. Is there any other place like that we can go to find more music like this, or is tap space like the go-to, and you should probably stick to this for now?
So I mean, there are other companies. I know Roll Off Company's been around for a while. I've just there's a ton on Tap Space, and I haven't had a need to go anywhere else. If anybody's looking for drumline warmups too, you can find 1,000 drumline warmups up there. One I love is the Vic Firth packet. You can find that on vicfirth.com, and there's like right from 8 on a hand, and it's written for everything. So a lot of the stuff you can find for free as well. And the tap space stuff, what's really cool is on YouTube, if you put in tap space, you'll see like for any piece, they'll have a video, and it's usually like a middle school or high school group playing whatever piece. So you can like watch kids play it. And kids love that too. If they're working on a piece, then they see the YouTube video and they're like, wait a minute, there's another human that was playing that. And that was kid was my age. And this is really cool. So um, and as far as knowing what level to be at, like to be honest, the sequential thing, I don't think of it that way. It absolutely needs to happen, and that's what I do. But I really just am always listening to music. I'm always listening to pieces, and I have this list that's going that has like hundreds of pieces on it that I've had for 15 years. And then all the time I have wind ensemble and I have concert band, and I'm like, ooh, this piece would be great. I'll put it up there. This piece would be great. We'll put it up there. And then as I listen to more music on Pepper or YouTube or wherever else, or I hear it at a concert, I'm like, oh, that would totally fit us this year. Great. I got to put it in. Well, just like a football team, if I'm going to take a new punter, I'm kicking my other punter off. So, like, if I love that march, I better love it enough to kick off this other march that I'm going to do. Or I love that piece, but the ballad we're doing is really better right now. So let me just throw it on my list and then put it up. And I don't know if you've heard this on other episodes, but I try to plan about a year ahead. And I know not everybody can, especially maybe in your situation. My wife's like, there's no way I can do that. Every year they come in and I have an idea what they can do, but it's so different year to year at the middle school level that I don't know how to do that. But for me, when I plan ahead, I can tell you what we're going to do in February next year, but it allows me to also tweak it as we go and to say, you know what, that piece is not going to work anymore. I thought the section was worse than they are, but they're better, or vice versa. So just being thoughtful and being willing to change pieces, as long as you're pursuing what you consider to be great music and that's appropriate for your kids, you're not going to go wrong. And once in a while you'll work on a piece, and after a week or two, you're like, ooh, I think this is too much. Like that, it's hard. And some people have asked, how do you know when to bail? Be like, yeah, we're done. No, that piece is not happening. Or how do you know when to just stick it out? And I don't know if there is a great way besides just kind of experiencing it. If I bail on a piece, I usually don't say anything. I'll usually just stop rehearsing it. And like if there's a piece and like 3 rehearsals in, I'm like, this is not I do not want to be fighting these battles that we're fighting right now. I was expecting this to be like this because we have other stuff to do. But a kid might have gotten really attached to that piece. I'm not going to come out and say like, hey, by the way, if you like this piece, I'm ruining all your fun. Like I'm not going to say that. It'll still be in their folder, and I'll just pass out another piece and we'll start working on that one too. And, we just kind of move on. And then I'm honest with them if I need to.
Yeah, that was fair. I had a similar situation. We're learning Arabian dances last year. It was one of those pieces that we're cutting it too close, and I was like, I don't know if we're gonna make it. And so I told the kids like, hey, there's a big possibility I'm gonna cut this. But I mean, they showed me up at the end of the year. Like they locked in. They went out of their way. They started practicing, and it was like a week away from the concert, and I was like, I was ready to cut it just because from where it was before, and then they surprised me.
Hmm.
Yeah, no, they genuinely surprised me, especially my little clarinet player. She's a true beginning this last year, and she's just going like
Hmm.
really just getting into like the groove of everything, and it was really nice. But yeah, they will surprise you sometimes, but I
I've heard teachers do that, like experienced teachers too. They'd be like, no, I want them to have this piece to really have to work for. My wife and I tend to not subscribe that way. We tend to go like, we want to make them sound really good. Like we want them to master whatever it is. But that happens too, where you're like, this piece might not happen. And then, sometimes you're right. They do rise to that. And then, but the over programming is a real problem, right? Because we all like played great music in college. We all went, oh man, if we could do that piece with my band, ooh, I'd be successful. Like we all have those pieces in our mind that we want to do. Um, but you got to program it for who you have, right?
Yeah, my mentor teacher actually, we grew up in a very rural area out in Marana, Arizona, and he said, "You race the horses that you have in the barn. If you don't
Mm,
have the horse, you can't join the race, right? So be careful about what you choose. If you don't have the horse in the barn, then Are we really racing to begin with? And it stuck with me, and I mean I still use it to this moment. Like and when I'm like looking at music, it's like I don't have a horse in the barn. I don't have the horse in the barn, or I do, or maybe I don't.
So, question: if you and I were in the same room and we had our trumpets, so like, hey, let's play some duets, right? We might like play some Voxman duets, and we might find some other stuff. And like, but if we found dead duets that were just far too hard for us, we play it for like a couple of minutes and be like, all right, let's find something we can play, right? Because that's where the
Yeah.
fun would be. And then eventually, if we played enough, we might like push ourselves, or we might find like, okay, let's work on this piece or whatever. But like, kids are the same way. They don't want to be in band class if they can't play the music, or if they can't, you know what I mean? So like, he's absolutely right. And I had a friend once who like he was younger than me, and he said, I got a concert tonight. I'm like, oh yeah, are you excited? No. Why not? Um, I don't even know where I am in the music. Like, I get lost by the time we get to the third measure. And this kid was not dumb. This kid was not like a bad player. It was just severely overprogrammed. And guess what? He quit the next year because he just couldn't access what he should, because the music was just far too hard. So I would rather underprogram a little bit, make them sound great, and then push them on a piece than the overprogramming thing.
And I really like what you said. Like we're here to make the kids sound great, right? If you're not sounding good, are you really enjoying what you're doing, right? If you're not finding that moment of like success, how are you going to enjoy what you're doing? And so,
We call it mastery, right? It's not you're not just playing the notes. Like, can you make it sound like the recording? Can you make it sound like the local symphony orchestra? Like that's your goal, is to like get kids to sound as best as they can to that. Now, that's not always going to happen, and at the same time, they don't always have the ability to go that deep, right? So there is a balance between, okay, let's push them so they think they're being challenged, while also making sure they're improving in all these other areas too. So
thank you. No,
yeah,
that
yeah,
really solidifies some of my thoughts on there. And don't overprogram. My gosh, just don't
man,
overprogram.
don't overprogram, man. All right, Alex. Well, this has been fun. Thank you so much.
Kyle, thank you so much.
Yeah,
Seriously, it's been wonderful. A lot of like knowledge and a lot of just wisdom just being passed on. So thank you. I really appreciate that.
We sincerely appreciate you taking your valuable time and listening to the Growing Band Director podcast. Your students are very lucky to have a band director like you. If you have any suggestions for episode topics or think you have an area of expertise to share on a show with us, please reach out. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to help spread the word, please give us a 5-star review and tell your band director friends to subscribe as well. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our YouTube channel, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening to The Growing Band Director. See you next week.